So, good morning and a warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. My name is Ifra George and I'm a corporate paralegal at Fichte & Co. and I will be moderating today's webinar session. So, we all know how the rapid spread of coronavirus has had a major impact on global shipping markets. With the slump in demand for goods, the impact is having a ripple effect on everything from container ships to oil tankers. Hundreds of ship sailings have been cancelled across the globe, and we have seen trade fall away with millions of workers and consumers in lockdown. We've received a number of inquiries about the impact of the coronavirus outbreak on international shipping. So today, our webinar will focus on the major legal implications, the importance of keeping the economy going, as we analyze the impact in the shipping market in particular. The webinar will also include a 30-minute Q&A session. Without any further delay, let me introduce you to our speaker, Alessandro Tricoli. Alessandro is a partner at Fichte & Co. and he's also the head of our shipping department. Alessandro's broad knowledge further encompasses many areas of the firm's contentious work, with a particular emphasis on disputes resolution in which he advises a number of the firm's clients. Alessandro was leading the team that obtained the first recognition and enforcement of a foreign arbitral award under the New York Convention by the Majeure courts and was the instructing lawyer in the two representative cases in the DIFC courts for the enforcement of foreign arbitral awards and judgments. More recently, he was involved in the dispute around Luna, the second largest expedition yacht in the world, and an arrest by the UAE courts following a freezing order issued by the DIFC. So Alessandro, I shall pass the screen to you.
Thank you, Ifra, and welcome everybody. We don't really have much time, but we have a lot of grounds to cover. The situation is scary, but it's not as hopefully not as bad as it might be. As you've seen, as Ifra has told you, we only have about half an hour to go through all that we want to cover. And in particular, obviously, we'll try to have a look at it by a legal point of view, but of course, we will make also all our findings, hopefully on a financial and general analysis from a general point of view. Now, the situation is changing. What we are going to say is obviously may change tomorrow. At the moment everything is very uncertain and the facts are changing very rapidly. But what is very important, what we would like to stress is that what everybody likes to stress is that it should be as far as possible a business as usual, because this is the easiest way in which we can try to get out of it. There have been other crises. This is not the first one. It's slightly different, but it's not even the worst, to be totally honest. Now, the first and foremost is that everybody who is facing the situation should consider what is the situation is and try to hedge as best as possible all its business. Now, the second important point to stress, there has been a lot to talk about force majeure and frustration and what can be done in contracts. Is this pandemic is now well known. So why the force majeure is something that applies to the older contract, but it cannot be relied upon on any recent contract. Now, going to the slide, let's go. Everybody, obviously, each part of the industry is going to be has been affected by the pandemic. But now let's go straight from a legal point of view in what we say, what we were discussing, the major concern, the force majeure and the frustration. So what happens if there is a contract that at the moment cannot be performed? The majority of the contracts are usually of the shipping contract are usually under English law, and under English law, the force majeure is not a general right, but there must be a contractual provision that allow a party to rely on a force majeure event. So the force majeure event, the force majeure clause needs to be there, and the force majeure clause needs to be triggered. Now, what is important is to check. It's not sufficient to say that there has been a force majeure event that is making the contract impossible to be performed, but this inability to perform, any loss that comes from the contract or any delay that the situation has caused, must be due to or must have been caused by the force majeure event. So in this case, the pandemic event. If this cannot be proved, then obviously the force majeure clause cannot be triggered. And obviously this is the element of the clause of force majeure clause that has the greatest potential for dispute, because obviously there would be a dispute from the other side saying that the event was not caused or due to the pandemic. The other point to be always be well aware is that even if there is a force majeure event and the force majeure event has caused the loss, the delay, the inability to perform, or whatever other problem, the party still needs to make reasonable efforts to avoid the force majeure event, or at least to mitigate the effect of the force majeure event. So it is not sufficient to say, well, there has been a force majeure event, I cannot do anything, so I am excused from my performance. There are still obligations on the part of on the parties to try and mitigate either avoid at all or mitigate the event. If there is no force majeure in your force majeure clause in your contract, then you can try and rely on frustration. Frustration is not a clause that needs to be included in the contract, but is rather an event that occur where the situation, so in this case the pandemic, has made the contract either impossible to perform or made the performance radically different, so that you are actually looking at another contract. However, the burden of proof is much higher in this case, and therefore there will be much more difficult to rely on such kind of clause. Now, if we pass to the second point, in having seen the relation between the parties in their shipping contracts, and we look at whether insurance can help, our marine insurance can help in to mitigate our losses or damages. Well, there are two types of insurance typically when we're talking about the shipping industry. There is the hull machinery and there is the P&I. The hull machinery is not really concerned in this particular hypothesis that we are looking at, because more or less what I can think of is maybe some delays in the supply of spare parts during some repair work, but otherwise the virus is not something that is affecting the vessel itself, but rather the crew and the performance. So it's more a matter for that might be covered by P&I insurers that are looking after the passengers, although a cruise line is completely different situation, and cargo that delivery of which may be delayed, or voyages that might be disrupted, deviation that needs to be done by the vessel. These are all, there is not just a one general solution that can be given, so are all parts that needs to be discussed and evaluated with the P&I insurers. One of the policies that we have seen giving the majority of the problem is the loss of hire, particularly if the ships was at the time effecting repair or was somehow out of service. and the resuming of service was delayed because of the pandemic. Or similar type of trade interruption in which the days for the loss of buyer policy were exceeded. However, again, it's difficult to make a general discussion, because these are all claims that needs to be evaluated on a case by case, and they may all differ because of different situation. Now, the other problem that we have seen increasing and arising more and more is due to the port closure and the port safety as well. Now, at the moment, obviously we cannot talk for the entire globe. We talk particularly for the GCC, for the UAE and for the GCC and ports, and the UAE in particular. The ports are open and are operating normally, although obviously there are some delays that are, and restriction to the operation. The FTA has issued various circular, and many of almost all of the ports have issued their guidelines of what can be done and what cannot be done. There are obviously there is an increased concern on the safety of the vessel and the crew, so on the situation, on the medical situation on board the vessel, because not only because of the port, but because of the borders of the country may be closed, and the restriction to the flight, it might be impossible or very difficult to conduct crew changes. These are other problematic that are coming out of just of general crew changes, but also in particular in ship sale and purchase, where it's becoming increasingly difficult to find a place, a port, where a change of crew and a physical delivery of the vessel can be effected in a practical way. But so assuming that the majority of the ports, at least in the area, are open and there are no port closure, the next point that we need to analyze is whether the port is a safe port, because under a charter party, typically there is a warranty that requires the charterer to nominate a safe port for the vessel. Now, this is another element that may create confusion and different opinion between the parties, because safety in the context of a safe port has typically been seen as a physical characteristic of the port. Why could have been the weather condition or any particular incident that has happened before and has made the port unsafe. Now, instead, in this case, we will be more looking on whether it is safe from a health point of view for the vessel to call to that particular port. Now, although it has been declared a pandemic, and we all know the risks that are involved with the moving around, it will be quite difficult to demonstrate that the port is unsafe, and very strong evidence will be needed to do so, because just the mere presence of the virus will not be sufficient to make a port unsafe. Then we are checking the next one. We would like to discuss the issue of delays. So, what is a delay that is excusable under the contract? Now, even in terms of general voyage and the charter party, normally there is the owners are at liberty to deviate for the purpose of saving life. Now, this become important in the context of the pandemic that we are seeing now, because because there might be a medical emergency on board the vessel. However, again, we need to make clear what is the purpose of saving life. So it cannot be just it cannot be simply any emergency. It has to be a life-threatening situation. This becomes important because during the deviation, whether it is in the presence of a time charter party or a voyage charter party, we will be facing with an issue of hire, in which if there is a deviation, the charterer will try to put the vessel off hire, or in the case of a voyage charter party, there will be no additional payments normally required for the deviation. So it is important to know that the deviation can be made, but there needs to be grounds to do so, and the financial consequences may vary depending on the terms of the charter party. In terms of simple delays instead. Again, it is on the particular charter party that we will see who has to bear the cost of any quarantine or waiting outside the port because of congestion due to the situation. However, normally, other than that, there are no further claim that can be put against the owner by the charterer for loss of damages because of quarantine or similar issue, because the ABSB rules gives a protection to the owner for this. And having seen the situation in terms of the charter party, now there is probably more analysis that needs to be done in relation to the shipbuilding and the ship financing, because this is somehow what is moving the industry, and in the absence of finance, we will not be able to continue with the construction and the new buildings coming on the market. Now, there has been, because of the particular juncture in which we are with the oil price and the less demand due to the pandemic, there has been a bit of a frenzy on the sale and purchase and on the charter market, obviously for the tankers, not for other vessels. However, on the shipbuilding side, we have seen probably one of the lowest quarter of in quite some time. There has been a slowdown and delays in all the previous ongoing construction, with the Chinese shipyards in particular that have invoked force majeure for the delays in shipbuilding or ship repairs. There has been also some delays, particularly on shipyards outside of China for repairs in terms of spare parts and other components that were delayed in the supply. So there has been in general a slowdown and many difficulties in the supply chain. In terms of finance, what we have seen in the market in general, in talking to bank ship owners and everybody, is that yes, there is a crisis. Yes, it is nothing new. There have been crises before, and to be honest, markets have been in much worse position than they are today. What is important from an owner point of view is to keep in mind that this downturn will put a lot of pressure on the financial covenants that are contained in the ship finance agreement already in place. So what is important now is important to do some prevention and to look at all these financial covenants, like the loan to value, the EBITDA, the layup, and any cross default clauses that are contained in the finance agreement, because these are the one that will be put under more stress. Let's not forget, as we have also seen from previous crises, the main key here is communication. The lender should be kept constantly informed, as long as more information becomes available. From many of the ship owners do not see the bankers as not always see the bankers as friends or business partner, but the bank itself doesn't have an interest on pulling the plug on let's say on a finance where the ship is on a medium to long-term time charter party, if there is a breach of a loan to value covenants, for example, because even the bank, from their point of view, what they need to do is they want to protect the cash flow as much as they want to protect the value of the asset. So triggering an event of default by calling an event of default under a loan to value covenant in a moment in which the ship owner is servicing the finance, it wouldn't really make sense from their point of view as well. So let's not panic just because we might be in a position in which certain financial covenants that are included in the finance agreement are not met. However, be sure that you know which one are the ones that you might be breaching or you are breaching, and make sure that you talk to your bank about this, because as I was saying, if you're still servicing the finance, then there won't be much of a willingness by the bank to go and pull the trigger. Particularly in again, we're going back in the general situation of the different sectors. Tankers in this particular moment are in a good position. They are earning good money. And although it is not sure for how long this will last, but it is a good moment in which owners can bank on this contract, and they will then be able to weather the storm that is coming in a better position. The dry bulk, for example, is in a much worse position because they are not experiencing the high rate that tankers are having, and the general understanding is that the market is trading at the moment below the cash break even. but they will survive this one as well. Container line again are another sector that will be facing very challenging times. So far, it seems that the lines have managed somehow to manage the capacity, but with the downturn, it might be difficult for them to continue. So what is the what is that we want to take away from this discussion is well, be very much aware of the clauses of your contract. There are many. You hear a lot people going around talking about different clauses. Force majeure is something that has been discussed a lot recently, but be aware that it's not as easy as just saying, well, there is a force majeure, the pandemic is a force majeure event, so I'm excused from the performance of my contract. As we said in the beginning, you need to make sure that it is in effect, whatever the problem is caused by the pandemic. You might need to give notice, and you have, in this moment where it is still possible to, where it is easy to do so, you have to collect evidence to support all these findings at a later time. The pandemic is now no longer a new event that could not be foreseen. So make sure that the force majeure, the force majeure therefore relates to previous contract. To all the new contract, the force majeure will not apply because it is not a new and unforeseen event. So make sure that in all the new contract you make provision for this pandemic that is ongoing, so that you will be able to you will avoid litigation, because you will have already directed how the situation needs to be solved. For example, there's been we have seen an increase in the sale and purchase of second-hand vessels. And in all the contracts that have been drafting for the past 2 months, there has always been, well, 1 month and a half probably, there has always been a COVID-19 clause, because with the fact, as we were saying, of the difficulties in affecting the physical delivery of the vessel, we needed to somehow make provision for that. There will be delays. There will be a need to review the entire supply chain that has proved to be unable to cope with the situation, and we are not going towards. We are probably not going towards a very good moment. Analysts in general are foreseeing at least 2 very bad years for 2020 and 2021, and the estimates are seeing the situation to return as normal, as much as normal can be, probably in 2, if not 3 decades. So it will take time to return back at the situation as it was, but it is also a moment in which we will have many opportunities to change the industry. It is somebody was comparing the situation that is ongoing now to the revolution that there was a long time ago, when the industry has passed from the sailboats to the steamboats, and probably this might be something that is we might be facing a similar crossroad. So it might be a very good time for the industry to change and to renew. I believe that more or less we've covered all that we wanted to cover. There was a last point on a contingency plan. Somehow what we were saying already in relation to the finance is be prepared. Don't just wait for things to happen, but it is a good moment if there is less to do on hands on the job, to sit down and review your contract, review your operation, and make sure that you have a contingency plan to see, because we don't know at the moment what will happen in the short future. It seems that everybody is trying to slowly reopen and make the economy restart, but we don't know whether this will be sustainable, whether this will continue. So we need to be prepared for any possible scenario. And I think I've covered now what we wanted, and I have exhausted my time. So we might pass on to some Q&A and some questions that you may want to pass by.
Thank you, Alessandro, for the presentation. There are certain significant points that you've mentioned, specifically in respect to the relevant measures put in place to address the risks, and obviously providing an overview of the legal issues that the shipping industry may be confronted with. So we will now start the Q&A section for this webinar, and I can see a lot of inquiries coming in. So if we proceed to the first question, which says, many Indian ports have reported force majeure issues due to COVID-19. Could you please elaborate on the issues and the legal implications related to those issues?
Well, I'm afraid this is not much that I can say about it. We discussed the issues of force majeure and what does this mean for the shipping industry, how and when a force majeure clause, if is in the contract, is triggered, how the Indian ports will manage that is not something that I'm in a position to discuss. Maybe an Indian lawyer would be in a better position to discuss. But yes, force majeure does exist, can be triggered, and the event at the moment is most likely an event of force majeure.
Okay, thank you, Alessandro, for asking that. So moving on to the next question, it says, could you please elaborate on the impact of the crisis on the shipbuilding industry in extension?
There are at the moment is a little bit early to discuss this, but in general, what we believe is that there will be a downturn in new vessel requirement over the next probably 2 to 3 years, and therefore there will be a slowdown of the in terms of order. At least this is what is logical. But what we have seen in other situation is that the new order does not always follow the market requirements. There has always been, and there will probably be, counter-cyclical ordering for speculation, strategic reasons. So it is difficult at the moment, but in general is that the shipyard will have opportunities, and although there might be a downturn that hopefully will be corrected by the speculative order, in the long term, there is a need for substantial shipbuilding demand, because the trade will grow again. We will need different specification for the vessel, different operating speeds, a different design, the new fuel, that something that is already been done, and most of all, let's not forget, as we were saying before, in terms of opportunities for the market, for the industry to transition to a different industry, the smart shipping. That is something that we cannot forget. So in the short term, there will be probably difficulties for the shipbuilding sector. We already seen that this first quarter was probably one of the slowest in some time, but I believe that it will not be anything long term, and it will probably the shipbuilding is one of the industries that will have more opportunities. Hope that answered the question, and we can probably move to a different one.
Yes. Okay. So another question that we have received is, what other long-term effects do you see on the marine warranty survey and surveying in general businesses due to this current COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, that is a good question. There has been a lot of discussion in terms of the digitalization of talking about smart shipping, the digitalization also in the marine insurance sector. However, maybe I'm a little bit of school, but I found it difficult to substitute a ship surveyor when it comes in damage assessment and accident investigation. The technology can do a lot, but I believe that this might still take some time. The technology, the digital technology in general, is already being used in the exchange, in the communication in the transfer of information between the parties, when even in the surveyor field, and it is very probably it is very effective when it comes to monitoring the functioning of the machineries on board the ships. But as I said, there are certain investigations, certain assessment which I found difficult to be substituted at this particular time, although with all the difficulties that the situation at the moment is posing. And do we have another question?
Okay, so continuing to the next question, it says, how is COVID-19 pandemic going to affect the shipping trade in the UAE and the Middle East as a whole?
Oh, well. I wish I could answer this question. It's a little bit too early. The situation is still too fluid. It's changing on maybe not on a daily basis, but it's changing rapidly. So we cannot really say how at this stage how it is going to affect the trade. The area has always been seen as very resourceful when we needed to make room for whether it was new legislation or different rules. We've always been, the UAE in particular, at the forefront of all the digitalization on the smart city and therefore also the smart shipping. So there are too many issues to consider, and most of them we haven't seen the full development yet. So it remains an area where that is a hub that is very important for the trade. Again, the UAE in particular. So in the short term, like all the other countries, there will be challenges posed by the reduced volumes, but I believe that there will be no negative repercussion in the long term.
Thank you, Alessandro. So just continuing to the next question, which is a little bit similar, but how can the shipping industry speed up the recovery process in the future?
And this is the other $1 million question. If I knew this, I would be a consultant. I would be. How can the shipping industry speed up the recovery process? It is, as we were saying before, it is a good moment to sit down and evaluate and reconsider the operation. See what are the next objective, the challenges that the future will pose, and be ahead of that. Plan and be ahead of all these opportunities and challenges that the tomorrow, in a reshaped way, because not only of this pandemic and the reorganization of the supply chain, but also the digitalization, the smart shipping, and all these new opportunities are coming in. So again, there is no magic formula that say do this and you will be ahead. But it is a good moment. There is the time, and there are the. It is a good moment to reevaluate the business and see what are these opportunities and catch them.
Thank you, Alessandro. So obviously, due to time constraints, I can see that we have quite a few questions that are coming in. So we will try our best to run through as many questions as we can. So without interruption more, let me just proceed to the next question. The next one is, will the current crisis speed up the industries to move into the digital era?
Well, I believe in a certain sense it may. I've read somewhere that it was estimated that around 3/4 of the renewal of the insurance renewal in the first quarter was conducted electronically. So it means that there was, although of the pandemic, there was no interruption. But still, there was no physical meeting. There was no people moving around from an office to another, going to see the client. There was nobody, no insurer, underwriter getting on a plane and travel to go and see the client. And still, we managed to do it. So I believe that it is a good starting point, because it has shown us that it is possible. On the other side, there has been also not only in relation to shipping, but in general, we have all experienced smart working, working from home, working remotely from wherever we were stuck when we were stuck. again, we've seen that is feasible, that we have all managed to keep up the work and even not being physically in the office. But in a certain sense, a phone call in the morning with the team to organize the work is not the same as a face-to-face meeting. It is not possible to see certain personal problem that somebody may have. So yes, I think it will make it easier to move. It will make it faster, probably, to move into the digital era, because it's something that it was already being tested, and now has been put on priority because of necessity. So yes. There will still be some challenges, but it will not be a total substitution. What we, in particular, what I would like to stress is that, as I see it, all this technology and data will allow us to augment rather than replace the human intelligence in the workplace. So we will still need the people. It will never be just a totally automated process, but hopefully we will see it working, and we will see it working fast.
Thank you, Alessandro, for that. So the next inquiry we've received is, what is the best and worst case scenario for the global shipping industry where 90% of the global trade is facilitated?
Well, we have touched on it. We've touched on it during the presentation. Now, we like it or not, whatever we want to call it, there will be a sort of recession following this pandemic. We don't know yet whether it will be a mild one or will be a severe one. So it is difficult to say what it will be. For sure, we know that we're looking at a couple of years, 2 at least, of bad time. However, if you want to see it if you want to see it on a worst case scenario, as I was saying, you're looking at 3 decades, so going back to normality in terms of volumes in three decades by 2050. But if you want to see it as in a more positive way, and if you want to see it on a best case scenario, we've also discussed about digitalization, smart shipping, how data can help us in making a better industry. And so all of this, all this situation may obviously accelerate all the investment that were already been made in this new fuel technology, a new application for this smart shipping and digital operation, creating a sort of if you allow me, 4th industrial revolution. This would be probably the best case scenario, in which we will still go through a recession phase, but we will come out, whether sooner or later, for sure better. So hopefully this was an answer.
Thank you, Alessandro. So we received another question in relation to traders. The question is, how would you suggest to traders on handling payment issues when documents are not available due to COVID-19?
Well, I believe that we are talking here about original documents which are not available. So I believe that trader can organize themselves to make sure that even if the original document is not available in his own end, it might be available in the end of someone else that he trusts at origin. So whether he's a lawyer, for example, or another or a different office, I think that I have seen, at least I have seen in other industries, not in the trade, but particularly in the sale and purchase, with all the difficulties that we were facing in terms of apostilling documents or having a physical closing meeting in which the original document could be exchanged. Well, there was obviously a certain level of trust, and but there has been also much cooperation from the authorities that have waived requirements that might have been unwaivable in previous moment, like attestation of document, legalization, notarization, and I mean, all these other people, whether it's a bank, another trader, or who is, they're facing the same problem. So they will need to they will need to come to terms with the fact that we need to find a different way. Obviously, is do business with people you trust. If somebody you never heard of tells you that he's the prince of a remote faraway state and wants to do business with you and to send him $10 million and he will send you the day after whatever goods he promised you, maybe that would not be the right thing to do.
Okay. Thank you for that, Alessandro. So I'm just going to ask you one last question as we're nearing the end of our webinar. So the question is, does the force majeure clause have to be specific? Is the COVID-19 clause may not cover any other future pandemic unless it's COVID-19 again?
Well, it depends on the drafting of the clause. A general clause to trigger the force majeure event some time ago should have been a very general clause could have been sufficient as to cover also the COVID-19. As of today, a general clause would not cover COVID-19 because it is no longer an unforeseen event. But in the force majeure clause, it's not a standard. I mean, yes, it is a standard clause, but you can put in there whatever you want. So you can say, for example, COVID-19 or any other future pandemic. So it is up to you to make to fill in the box of the force majeure. I like to think of the force majeure as an empty box. So these are the event of force majeure is empty. Then it is for you in drafting the clause to put inside all the events that you can think of that might become a force majeure event. So it is up to you, and when you draft the clause, to make sure that you cover as much as you can. However, yes, the short answer is if the clause is tailor-made specifically for the COVID-19, it will not cover another pandemic unless it says COVID-19 or similar events. Okay.
Thank you, Alessandro, for answering those questions. So we have arrived to the end of today's session, and as informed earlier that due to the time constraints, we might not be able to answer all the queries. However, we will be conducting a series of webinars, so please do stay tuned for more information. And I did notice that there were quite a lot of insurance-related queries mentioned. However, we might host a webinar on this specifically later in the future. So please do stay tuned for more information. And just as a summary of what was discussed in today's session, we looked into the legal implications within the shipping industry, the measures and recommendations by authoritative bodies, and how the industry has been impacted by COVID-19, and also a few takeaway pointers regarding contingency plans and contractual flexibility for the respective ship personnel. So on that note, I would like to thank everyone who has joined our webinar session today. Thank you for your time, and the full recording of the session will be published on our website later today. So do keep an eye on our LinkedIn and Twitter pages for the update. And a massive thank you to Alessandro for presenting and answering the queries. So goodbye, and until next time, and this concludes today's session.
Thank you, Ifra. Thank you, everybody.